Ngā reo, e ngā matawaka o te motu. Nau mai, piki mai, haere mai. Haere mai I rangi te kaupapa whakahira o tēnei wā, o te wānanga o Zenergy. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which this webinar is being hosted and the many lands on which we are all meeting today. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I'm joining from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and wish to pay my respects also to iwi, tangata whenua, and Treaty of Waitangi Partners. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Facilitation Optimiser webinar this evening, even today or this morning if you're joining us from overseas. From wherever you're joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Stephen Thorpe, and with my colleague Simone Mouse, we'll be leading you through this session today. Our purpose is to share advanced facilitation wisdom, and we have some Zenergy concepts we're going to introduce you to today in a diagnostic framework we hope you'll like and we'll get to explore. And some of that advanced facilitation wisdom will come from the people who have joined us on the webinar today. So there's a lot of experience joining us in the room, as we know, and people who have been leading and facilitating groups for a long time. So in terms of our culture and how we're going to work together today, we really encourage you to value difference, to participate, to be curious, and to give it a go. So hopefully you'll join us in that. Now, before I say a little bit about me, I invite my co-host and colleague Simone to introduce herself. And I'll admit people as you go.
Thank you, Stephen. Awesome. Welcome, and I like to acknowledge I'm here on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne, and I also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Now, I got a bit of a cold, so you can hear that, and I also got an accent. I'm a Saxon woman from the state of Saxony in Germany originally, and I found facilitation about 35 years ago back in Germany, in a country that was just at the beginning of a big unification project after the Berlin Wall came down. And I found my passion in bringing diverse perspectives together and two countries together during that time. I found Zenergy about 15 years ago, met Stephen in New Zealand. I was living in New Zealand for 5 years, and really found my calling back in a whole new language around facilitation when I discovered Zenergy. And it was very close to my heart to what I learned in Germany as well before. Now I'm running my own company. I'm working around relationship. I do healthy relationship coaching in organizations and in personal relationships. I do team development and work with large culture transformations as well in big corporates. And I'm really glad to be here. I'm still working. I'm a director together with Stephen for Zenergy as well. So I'm training these Zenergy mid trainings and been doing so for the last 12 years. So I'm really excited to be here and to share something that's quite close to my heart, some of the magical elements of facilitation that we're teaching. Thanks, Stephen. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Simone. Well, a little bit about me. I'm a director of Zenergy and a lecturer in the computer sciences at the Auckland University of Technology, where I lecture on team facilitation and now Master of IT Project Management. And I work with organizations predominantly in the technology space, where people working together is really important in project success. And I supervise students doing all sorts of wonderful research projects in that space. I'm excited to see a few of my students, past and present, joining us today. So kia ora. Now, my facilitation foundation story began some 26 years ago when I had this wonderful lady, Dale Hunter, walk into my research laboratory. And Simone, if we switch over to the next slide, I've got a photo of her there. And this wonderful lady, Dale, came in and we were working on a large interactive display surface project. And I was interested in how people were going to use the technology and work together. But Dale and I had this wonderful conversation about the consciousness of trees, and we connected over that. And shortly after, I came to do a 6 month workplace secondment at Zenergy, and 25 and a half years later, I'm still there attached and doing this wonderful facilitation work. Dale started Zenergy back in 1993 with three colleagues, training people in facilitation and in group work, and has since co-written five books on facilitation and group work, including The Art of Facilitation, which is my go-to for things on facilitation. Um, and she's contributed many chapters and developed the Zenergy diploma in facilitation, drawing on that work of John Heron, Carl Rogers, Peter Singh, amongst others. Yeah. So Dale completed a PhD on sustainable cooperative processes in organizations, and much of what the Zenergy approach has been developed out of that work and in the community development work Dale and others have undertaken in South Auckland, predominantly in the migrant Māori Pacific groups that were living here. So a lot of our facilitation approaches come from the community focused learning. Describes Zenergy in one sentence. Zenergy is a cooperative of group facilitators, all trained in the same approach and the same method, and we're committed to whole people cooperating in a sustainable world. So that's a little taste of what Zenergy is and us. And now I'll hand over to Simone to take you through some of the frameworks and tools that we're going to explore this evening.
Yeah.
Over to you, Simone.
Thanks, Stephen. So I mean, we're here to talk about some, hopefully some frameworks that can help to work with those tricky situations when our groups get stuck, right? And Steve and I really enjoyed reading all your registrations and all the things you are interested in. And we have a bit of time at the end of this to dive into a bit deeper and gather some of the wisdom that's here in the room around the questions that you brought. So I just want to touch on a couple of frameworks. Fun is the way we teach and the way we're learning about facilitation is through a 6-step framework. It's a bit like I would say, a facilitator's journey that we're taking on. So the first 3 steps are covered in our stage 1. This is where you're learning to understand some of the distinctions and the essences of facilitation, which we talk about today. Some of the key elements that are needed in order for cooperative ways to be sustainable. That's what Dale has explored in her thesis. And in stage 2, you're learning how to notice when something in the group is missing and then how to generate it. So and we're using this tool as a coaching tool within our training. So when you get stuck and we're like, what is missing here? So I'll just give you an example. These are the 12 distinctions that Dale is talking about in the essence of facilitation. Oops, there we go. This is the foundations of the stage 2, the advanced training. And you can see, I mean, a lot of these things are probably very familiar for you, and others might be not as much. But we're basically learning in the first instance, what does it actually mean to have a purpose and a culture? What does intentionality actually mean in a group? What does emotional competence mean? And what experience do you actually have with that? And what have you integrated around that by working in groups? That's how we work in our stage 1. And I want to give you one of our key frameworks, the facilitator framework, the facilitation model. This you see in the middle a pyramid, which is a symbol of the container that we're creating with groups. So it's like a pyramid. On the top is the purpose. So without a purpose, you really don't have a reason to be there as a facilitator. Right? There has to be a purpose, and the group's purpose gives you the mandate to intervene, to guide the group, to do whatever you're doing. It is always around purpose. So purpose has to be very clear, and it's probably one of the hardest things that I find often with clients to actually nail that one. What is it? What is your actual intention to be here and for the groups? Within the pyramid, you see a culture. So we all coming with all our own cultures to a group, and we all bring our own biases and our own lenses. And when you are working within a group, you're creating a new culture, a new container. Like Stephen at the beginning, and in the chat, you have the culture we created just for this little webinar tonight. Yeah, this is what we're agreeing around. So you're creating some kind of group agreement. And the the longer the project is, or the longer the group is together, the more time you probably spend on creating this culture, right? So to create really getting everyone's voice in to create an agreement on how you want to behave in order to achieve your purpose. On the bottom of the pyramid, you got three characters. You got the facilitator, you got the individuals, and the group. So as a facilitator, you have to always facilitate yourself, yeah? Your own emotions, your own triggers, your own different voices that you have. So there's a lot going on in here when you're right in front of everyone. You have the agenda to consider, you have, interventions to consider, etc. So you have to facilitate yourself. You have to have some skills around facilitating yourself so you can be calm and your attention can be out at the group. You also have to facilitate individuals sometimes and have to bring them in. And you always have to facilitate the group, and the group is an identity in its own right. So you have your attention always, not just in on the individual parts, but as a group as a whole. Then you also have to facilitate external environments, right? And you have to facilitate social and legal contracts. And as facilitators, we often find ourselves to have one client who pays us to get into an organization or into a certain project, and then you have the group that you're working with. So how do you work with that, right? How do you work with the agreements? So sometimes, managers or the CEO that calls us in has very different ideas of what they want to achieve with the group than the group has itself. So we can come in and purpose can change, culture can change, depending on what we find in the group. So this gives you an example of one of our core frameworks in our stage one. And again, we go through here, like what do you understand and experience around working with purpose and culture and working with facilitating self, others, and the group. And then in stage two, you want to learn how to generate it. So this is the real magical thing. So you might come into a group. So now you understand what is purpose, what is culture, what is power with, what is emotional competence, and all those different distinctions. And now you come into a group and you need to learn to see, and that's the diagnostic lens that we're talking about, you need to see what is missing in a group. And that's what we want to share with you today. How do you notice like what is missing in this group? So first you recognize what is missing, and then you demonstrate it. Like let's say powerful listening is missing. So you can demonstrate the powerful listening, and the group will role model you and pick it up. And that will generate powerful listening in the group. So in stage two, you have a lot of time in our advanced training to explore what is an intervention that would actually generate a certain distinction that is missing in our group. So it is a real mastery and a real skill to find out what interventions help us to achieve certain distinctions. So interventions, this is another model that we use, giving you a framework of why would you intervene. This is just sort of really making it really explicit, different types of intervention you might find, why you might intervene. Now, the key thing here is that you're always standing in a purpose. Remember, the purpose is the boss. The purpose gives you the mandate to be there, not you. If you are thinking it's you, then you're going to get into trouble because people will push back at you, right? The purpose is the boss, and if the group wants to change the purpose, then you might change the purpose. So you always intervene from purpose. And then you might intervene to guard the culture or to enable participation. You might want to shift levels when you notice there's no intuition. This group needs more intuition right now. How can I shift the levels from just thinking and talking to maybe a non-verbal exercise where people can express how they feel. That can be a much more safe exercise. It can be accessing information through different ways. You might want to balance task and process, right? And a lot of you asked about how do you keep the group moving forward whilst also harvesting the richness of the content, right? Balancing what's needed. So you need to find different interventions to do that. Of course, you need to manage time and external factors. And sometimes you also need to create choice in your facilitation, yeah? So the art of facilitation, which Stephen showed earlier, has a lot of questions in here linked to each of those types of interventions. Yeah, so as a reference. Okay, but now let's play with this diagnostic lens. So we created a bit of a mandala out of the 12 distinctions that are in the essence of facilitation. We call them distinctions, we call them essences, we call them elements of facilitation that need to be there for effective group interaction. That's what we've been working with and researching for over 30 years. So maybe before I go, is there anyone who notices on here one that they don't know what it is? You're welcome to go off mute or put it in the chat. Is there any distinction on here, on any element that doesn't make sense to you, that you would like me to explain?
Hi, Simone.
Yeah,
Probably power with. Is
yeah,
that power with the team, everyone together, or?
yeah, absolutely. So power width is a terminology that Dale has created, and the distinctions are that you often in teams have either power over, which means someone uses power for hierarchy or control, dictating, and then you have the other phenomena, which is power under. That's when people are submissive, when they are giving their power away and not taking responsibility for cooperation. They're withdrawing, they're sabotaging by not being present, by not listening, by not actually engaging. So how, as a facilitator, do you create power with, so that you are not over, but you're actually with them together, and that they have a choice around, for example, right now, with my intervention of asking you to ask what's needed, I created a level of power with, right? I gave you some power to choose what you like me to talk about. That's an example. So you were right on the money, Melinda. It's exactly how to create power together in a team. Yeah. Anything else, Jude? Yeah.
Love you to say a little bit about completions.
Sure. Stephen, you want to take that one?
Yeah, this is definitely one I've struggled with as a facilitator. And often, with this diagnostic tool, we've got this idea that on the outside, you've got a 10 out of 10, and in the bottle, you've got 0 out of 10. And if you think of a group that's struggling to get complete, there may be things that are getting in the way of that. And that might be something you notice that, they're very good at starting, they're initiating, but there's not the carry through, or, there might be something that you may not be sure of, but you're noticing there's a pattern there. So, yeah, it's definitely something as a facilitator that it'll show up in some shape or form, either in the behavior or the team not achieving what it's trying to do within the frame they've said that they're trying to do it in. Yeah.
Yeah, completion is quite an art to notice when a group is actually complete with a conversation, or if they're just finishing because they had enough, or it's quite an art form to notice completion. I will go on because we want to do an exercise now. So we will get you to think about a group in a minute where you can use this as a diagnostic tool. But before you go in, Stephen and I give you an example on how we used that with a group recently. Stephen.
Yeah, I had a friend who had a flat dispute, and it was over the flat account. They had a shared bank account, and they had certain things that they could purchase on it and certain things they couldn't. And these were flatmates that knew each other really well, and they'd lived together for 4 years. and so they weren't new flatmates, and they had this problem because the girls had purchased their tampons with the flat account, and the boys thought they'd broken the rules, and the girls thought the boys were being sexist pigs. And so this flat that had got on really well for 4 years together, suddenly nobody was talking to anybody, and there was you could feel the energy walking into the flat, and I offered to help facilitate a conversation around it. And 5 minutes in, someone had screamed at someone else had sworn at someone else, someone had banged the table and stormed out. And I thought, wow, so much for the great facilitator here. And I said, okay, I think we're taking a 20-minute break. And so I sat on the back porch with my friend, and she cried for most of the 20 minutes. And then everybody came back together. And what I noticed was that there was no listening. There was very low listening. And so they're talking across each other. I thought they'd lost the purpose and the culture of their flat, because I knew they loved each other and they cared for each other very much. And they'd had, this culture of flatting together. The other thing I thought was missing was safety. So it wasn't safe to be able to speak without getting into the conflict and the emotional competence. And I think, yeah, 2 of the 4 were okay with emotional competence, the other 2 weren't. So we sort of had them halfway there. So I'm sort of using this diagnostic to sort of look around the situation. We were in their integrity and speaking their own truth, which was really present. And there wasn't a power over dynamic. So I've given them sort of 9 and 10 out of 10. But definitely the purpose and culture that had as a flat was gone, and that safety bit. So the interventions I came in was to remind them of how they'd been as flatmates and how they didn't have a purpose to have a flat where nobody was talking to each other. The other thing was the deep listening. So I encouraged people to speak, and that everyone would get a chance to speak, and to speak one by one and not interrupt. And so that was the other intervention. And I didn't have a clue what was going to come out, but I said, you need to trust that there's a solution here that will emerge. And they did a round, and they did another round, and then the 3rd round they'd solved their own problems. So the boys were allowed to buy their roll-on deodorant out of the flat account, and everyone was happy. So this is how this diagnostic can be quite useful to see what's missing, and then how do we generate it as a facilitator to put something in place for the group to use. Yeah. So over to you, Simone, with your version of
Thank
a
you.
recent event.
Yeah, so my recent event was an interfaith dialogue between Jewish and Muslim people. And it's, of course, linked to the recent conflict in the Middle East. And it was a very sensitive subject. The group is called In Good Faith, and we had a facilitated dialogue. And the purpose was to create some understanding between different perspectives and practice the art of listening to something that's hard to hear. And this particular session, that's why we had several facilitators to come in to facilitate small groups. We wanted to tackle some of the real difficult subjects, the real triggering words, which was something the group wanted to talk about for quite a long time. So what happened was that we did create beautiful conversations. We did achieve the purpose of increasing understanding, but we did not get to the difficult subjects. And when I did the diagnostic, I realized, because it's quite a dynamic group, so people come and go, we were really hard to find and get an agreement from the group for their purpose, why they were there. So what I would have probably done differently next time is to do an intervention to involve the group to generate the purpose and say, who's here today? This is our purpose that we have. What do people think? And bring them into actually evolving the purpose with us together. So that would have been intervention to create choice and also power with an empowerment. I also noted what was missing was, of course, completion, because they didn't get the real chance to talk about the real tricky things. What we did really achieve was high safety and trust, because the process was really strongly held. We were so worried that it's going to get off the rails that we created so much safety. and trust. So there was a lot of the emotional intelligence, the intuition, the powerful listening, integrity was all there. Everyone was really there with such a high intention to make it work for everyone. But we didn't quite achieve the real dialogue about the difficult things. But there will be another session. So I was also thinking another intervention I could have done is enabling participation in the completion. To say like what do people still need to complete this process, to actually get to these tricky subjects, and ask that question and then see what happens from there. So that's an example where this group got stuck. So now it's your turn. So in the chat is the mandala, and you can either download it or you can just take a piece of paper. But if you can't print it quickly, then it's maybe a bit harder. But you can use that as a tool for the future, of course. Download that PDF from the chat. So I'd like you to think about a group you're working with, or a team disaster, or something you experienced where a group got stuck, right? How do you rate the presence of each of the 12 essences in your group? Which ones were missing entirely? So just spend like 5 minutes around reflecting on your own, and then we're going to put you into pairs to share that with someone. Go ahead, and if you have any questions, just get off mute and let us know.
It's me.
Hi, Christy.
Yes.
I'm confusing with the number 11 and the number 1. So number 1 is the purpose, but 11 is the
Intentionality.
similar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like you have a purpose, but then people are not very intentional to achieve this purpose. They're going off track and talking about all sorts of things and have other intentions. They're not intentional to achieve the purpose. And they don't help you to really achieve it with you, So you have to do a lot of work on bringing people back to purpose. That's when intentionality is missing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes a group will say, they'll say this is what we want to achieve, but then you'll see the anti-purpose showing up in their behavior, almost the opposite. And often that's where you can say, I think there might be intentionality missing, or what I notice is that you have this purpose, but you're not behaving in line with what you might need to do to achieve it. And sometimes, there may be things that are pulling away from people's ability to be intentional. And you can address those first, and then that frees people up to focus. So, sometimes it might be looking to create choices for people.
So that means the team members' internationality rather than the facilitators.
Yes, it can also be the facilitator. Like if you're not clear about the purpose and you're not standing strong in it, and you are getting a bit flaky and getting all sorts of included into the side conversations, then you are not intentional yourself. Like you can pull up intentionality in yourself as well. And that also comes with like you're much more on time, you're much more on target on what needs to be done to actually achieve the purpose. So when you're not fully present as the facilitator and you get distracted, then you're not intentionally enough.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, and sometimes you might ask the question, or if they're not being intentional, is the purpose itself not finished? Is it not quite clear enough? Is it ambiguous so that people aren't really sure what needs to happen to achieve it? So that can be a question too, is there something more with the purpose that could be looked at? And that could be a question you could ask the participant. They have a question about intentionality. Is the purpose clear? Does everyone understand what that means? Sometimes language can mean different things to different people too. So that could be a, a, a diagnostic that could give you an intervention that would be useful.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna get you into the groups now. I know you might not fully finished. I'm just gonna pushing it ahead a bit to get to our wisdom circle as well.
Mm.
So in your pairs, you got the opportunity to share a little bit about what's missing. Maybe just pick one or two that are missing in your group. And then as a coach, when you're listening, you can then ask, how can you generate what's missing in your group? What intervention could you do to generate it? Yeah, makes sense. So you're helping each other. And so you have only about 3 minutes each. So it's really very sharp. Like that's the group, that's the purpose, and this is what I'm thinking is missing. And you're just brainstorming with each other. What's the intervention you could do? Does that make sense? I don't know if anyone has a question before I send you off. Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for engaging in that exercise. What we've done is we've tried to summarize a lot of the questions and comments and things people were looking for into 5 or 6 different categories of what we call the final wisdom gathering. And we'd love to hear how you found using the diagnostic tool. So the last one at the end might be the number 6 question might be useful for you. With respect to redirecting with respect, that was one of the questions. How do we intervene and not come across as being rude or to shut the group down or to embarrass people? Did anyone have a situation or example related to that they used the diagnostic tool to explore? Yeah.
There was a time when I was facilitating a group recently when like the prompts that I had given the group were kind of like what's not working at the moment, like what could be better. Um, and then someone starts launching into like a very detailed analysis of like what it's like working as a volunteer in this organization and all of the sort of really petty, not petty, but like very real frustrations with like systems and processes and they started becoming quite granular and then also offering suggestions on how those things could be improved. And yeah, I was like, oh, we've only got in my mind, I was like, we've only got, like another 3 minutes on this section. Like, I really don't think this is actually what this session is about. So I kind of can't remember. I think I just said something like, okay, thank you, David. We'll talk about this like at another time, but that's not actually, we've got a lot to cover. So like just bookmark this for later.
Yeah. Did that shut him down at all? Was he okay with the
Yeah,
idea that
yeah, he
it'll be
laughed.
held and you get a chance? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, did you come up with any interventions in your peer conversation around tackling that?
Didn't that actually only occurred to me then. But I think, yeah, not sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, interventions. Do you mean, sorry, interventions when someone goes off piste
Yes,
or?
yeah. Because you could have easily gone down the rabbit hole with all of those, problems that might be surfacing that are very
Yeah,
granular and very detailed, and then
yeah.
the group's been taken with that tangent, and it sounded like you're trying to keep people on purpose. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that intervention.
Yeah, I think it was just like, yes, these are all valid concerns, but we just need to keep it sort of top level for the time being or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think certainly acknowledging what someone's contributing, because you've asked the question and then one person might respond, but that's what the group's responded with to that question. So sometimes it can be very easy as the facilitator to dismiss something that might not be important to me. But the fact that you acknowledged it was a really good intervention and you kept the group on the purpose. So I think you did a couple of really useful things there. And it sounded like you've checked out whether he was okay with that. If he's laughed,
Mm.
you've not just done it and then moved on, but there has been that interaction. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Catalina. Maybe we'll move on to the next question. Thinking about time ourselves, reading the room and knowing when to act. In terms of, does anyone have an example where they've had to read the room and decide, do I intervene? Do I not intervene? Did they come up against one of those in their peer conversation?
Is it okay to share? I was asked to come in and do a mediation for two organizations who had decided to merge, but the boards knew this, but none of the staff did, and so there was a huge confusion and sense of betrayal, and so they asked me to come in. They actually closed down both places and brought people together in one room and said, "Okay, let's mediate this." And so we started going around the circle, and he just asked people to say, share your name and just in very few words, what are the key issue. And there's 18 people, and it gets around to about the ninth person, and I suddenly realize this is not a mediation issue, this is a conflict management issue. And if I start mediating, I will create sides. So I had from number 8 to number 15 to completely redesign the workshop and move it into conflict management rather than mediation, because I realized that mediation creates sides, so it weren't actually there. It was a communications issue. It was so that was an interesting piece where we had you have to be flexible. Yeah.
Yeah, and having a plan's really great, but knowing that plan's no longer going to work. And it's
Yeah,
great
it
that
was going to
you've
cause
noticed that in the moment.
harm to do the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have the plan and know to throw it out sometimes, because you're following what's emerging in the group in the moment, not what you've prepared in the past. That isn't going to serve the future. Yeah. Yeah. Has anyone else had a session where they've found that what they've turned up for has been completely different from what emerged in the group dynamic? No? Okay, well, maybe we'll move on to number 3, Simone. Move on to the next slide. Yeah, balancing time, richness, and outcome. It's a very common challenge where you've got things to deliver within a time frame, and it can be tricky to keep the group on that course. You don't have a particular challenge around that they explored with the mandala? Yeah. Did anyone have a situation we could explore now? No taken. What about managing dominant dynamics? That's often something we see in the groups. A dominant personality taking over.
I'll jump in
Claire, you had a
here.
situation.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Suzanne, who I was in the room with, and we were spent the last 3 years facilitating an 18-member elders group. So people bringing quite a lot of distrust and trauma into the room. Some individuals with probably large hijacking because of a whole number of reasons and how to manage that. And interrupting other elders, and so yeah, I had to manage those dominant dynamics, and I actually took the individual out for a cup of tea.
Mm.
Yeah, gave that individual a few more tasks and responsibilities, and by the end, he was our biggest advocate for the project.
Mm. It sounds like you created choices and empowerment, and
Yeah.
and ownership showed up, I think. Yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah,
So
and
creative
shifted
intervention.
shifted some levels as well from the group to the individual, right? Amazing.
And sometimes when you're facilitating and working with one participant, an individual in the group, you're also facilitating the group at the same time,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
quite helpful.
yeah. And because of cultural protocols, some members of the group didn't feel like that they could intervene, and so the group found it very hard to self-moderate. But what I found is they gave me the permission to do it, and so as we went on, I was able to, really start calling bad behavior, and everyone was like, "Hip hip hooray!" Yeah, it was good. Yeah, good learning for me.
And that can often be one of the really important, valuable components of a facilitator coming in, because they're not a member of the group. They're not part of the group culture. They can be someone from outside of that dynamic that can
Absolutely.
act on behalf of the whole.
Yeah.
Can I ask, was that when you took them out for tea, cup of tea, was that a day workshop, or was that like a
it
week
was over
workshop?
It was Melinda, it was over about 3 years. So I was facilitating that group probably on a quarterly, sometimes bi-monthly basis to start with.
Okay. Because I thought, oh wow, if it's a 4-hour workshop, how did you get out for a cup of tea?
No, this was a long term, and we had to turn things around if we wanted to make it a productive and a purposeful session for everyone turning up when it was getting dominated by one individual.
I mean, it introduces a really interesting question. How do you do it in a smaller session where you're noticing there's a person dominating? I mean, you can intervene with the behavior directly and say, well, thank you for that, but let's hear from some of the other people that haven't spoken yet. But you can also go back to your purpose and culture and say, well, what's in the culture that would help enable me here? And everyone's going to get a chance to participate. If that's in your culture, you can say, well, in our culture, we have this. And you can often use that as a facilitator to see how you're going to intervene. But yeah, taking someone for a cup of tea and giving them jobs to do in the group. So it's a creative intervention too. All right, should we jump on to number 5?
Yes.
Oh yeah, facilitator confidence and composure. Yeah, managing anxiety, projection, self-doubt in the moment. Yeah, knowing what to say, trusting yourself and act rather than freeze. I've done a lot of interventions that have bombed in the group. If the group doesn't like the facilitator intervention, they'll just ignore it, I found. And often it's going back to what might work here, or perhaps just going, oh, that didn't work. Try something else. And often, looking to the shifting of levels might sometimes solve the problem. In the academic environments that I'm in, people are often trying to be right and to be more right than the other people in the room. And because they're experts in their particular field, they're paid to be right in 1 and 2 hour sound bites with large groups of people. So we have these very challenging conversations. But if you shift the levels a bit and ask people, what do you feel about that rather than what do you think? it interrupts that kind of headiness and stuck position. Yeah. Does anyone have an example of this in their conversation? Feeling unsure, not sure what to do? Anyone like to share or even paste in the chat if you don't want to use the microphone?
I suppose I could share a bit about this. So I had to facilitate a group of basically a vendor and a client trying to arrive at what is the best solution for the company to move forward. And you have different personalities on both sides, where some people are dominating, some people would like to share a lot of their experiences. And but the most important thing in this scenario was time was running out and the meeting room had other people waiting. And I was there trying to manage the time and letting everybody speak. But then I come from a culture where it's very hard, like it's very much frowned upon to talk over people, especially when we're in the middle of a very passionate discussion. And it's struggling to kind of intervene and say, "Hi, hey, we only have 5 minutes left. We better wrap up." And because you're trying to muster up the courage to speak up, time goes on, and then now it's like you only have a minute left, and it's just the anxiety keeps building, and until like the last minute, I had to stop. But then it's a little bit too late. Then you could have, intervene earlier and wrap up better. Yeah.
Yeah, Simone, you want to jump in?
Oh, it's just a great example to where we are at because we're running to 1
We've
minute.
got 2 minutes to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I said good. I mean, you can always negotiate more time at the end, but yeah, this jumping in earlier, say really honoring the time of completion, and giving people a choice. Where do we want to go now, is really important. You would love to hear if you any practical frameworks that you can apply from this session. So if you could put that into the chat, that would be really great. And also, I put already in the chat where you could go next with us. Of course, talking about this and this diagnostic tool, it's a mastery to learn really to notice what's missing and then to really generate those distinctions. And that's all what we're doing in stage 2, people practicing generating those distinctions and learning more about those distinctions. And we have one coming up in Sydney, the end of June. So we've got a few more spaces there, and we also got some online programs for the international people here, but also for Australian and New Zealand's. These programs are great. They go over a certain amount of weeks on an evening in Australia. And the Essence of Facilitation book as PDF, you can download that as well. That's that one. To read a bit more about what these essences are really in depth. And there are some intervention ideas in this book as well. But yeah, let us love to hear if there's anything particular that stood out for you that you're taking away, an insight or learning. And I think the fastest way to do this right now would be via chat. But we're also staying on for a little longer if you want to have a little bit more of a chat with us. That's also possible.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been an honor to share with you some of the great tools that we've learned in our facilitation journey, and to get to meet you and to hear some of your story and your journey with facilitation.
Mm-hmm.